So the subject of this talk is how do you make your own questions in Hawks? In particular, how to use Excel and LaTeX and a few tricks and the table functions in Hawks to make your own questions. Hawks has wonderful questions, but there are a lot of times when there's things I want to ask in a different way, and I want to emphasize different things. And I find there's no question that gets at what I'm trying to teach. And so I'll come up with my own questions. Fortunately, Hawks does have a facility that allows you to do that. Before we get into it, I just wanted to let people know that, let me do this as a slideshow. That there's a disclaimer, don't sue me if something in here doesn't work and you get sued or something. And there's no statement of opinion of my current employer or any prior employers. Just my own work, and if there's anything wrong with it, I guess it's my fault, but I'm not necessarily warranting it's totally right. So Hawks has facility, and we're going to go into that. And the idea is that you want to set up inputs and outputs in Excel. All the parameters and the inputs and outputs are in a row. Each row is a different version of a question. So you can have 100 rows, you'll have 100 versions. If you have 5 rows, you'll have 5 versions of this question. It helps if all the formula relationships are the same between these columns. In fact, it has to be for it to make sense. What you're going to do at some point is copy and paste the Excel table into a table in Hawks. We're going to show you how to do this. I'm just trying to give you the overview, and maybe it doesn't quite make sense right now, but it will hopefully as we go on. Hawks, each question is a question header. After a few preliminaries of setting up a folder and setting up maybe the question name, you're going to write the question header in Hawks, and then each question has several steps, and each of the steps then has an answer, different types of answers. So you're going to write question headers and then a series of questions, steps, and answers for each step. Where do you use LaTeX? Well, I don't know much about LaTeX, but I can at least go on the web and say, well, how do I make alpha, the Greek letter alpha? Because I'm doing something in statistics and I have my alpha. Or maybe I want some summation signs or something. LaTeX lets you put those in a nice way, and you can use those within side of the Hawks facility. So that's where LaTeX will come in. So you start off with going into assignments, and then there's a thing called Question Builder on the bottom left. I've circled it. By the way, I'm not sure if there's an easy way for you to stop me if you have questions, but I'll try to look at the Q&A to see if anybody's asking anything. Not right now. Okay. Next, you create a folder for the question. Now I have a series of folders here. I have continuous RV, random variable questions, cross classification tables. This was in a statistics course, exponential distribution questions. So I made up a whole series of questions that I wanted to add in. And so you create a folder, and within a folder, you will create a series of questions. You click then create question, and you'll get something like this that gets you to step 1. And you can't really see it super clearly, but at the top it says question header optional. To me, the question header for these types of questions that I'm asking is not optional. Often I'll have multi-part questions, and I just want the same information that is the base of the question to show up in each of the steps. And there's different answers here. They have it set up as multiple choice answers. We're going to have different types of answers. We're going to have like numerical answers. So I'll show you in a second how you change the types of answers. then you edit the question header. So we went from folder to question header. And the question header will be seen for each step of the question. Changes here will be reflected for all steps. So once you change the question header, obviously it will change that header for, if you have 5 steps, each of the 5 steps. Now, what I like to do if I have a table, I insert the table. So the table I inserted had 4 rows and 3 columns. You can change the rows and columns. You can change what types of tables and what's inside the tables. In this case, it's data. It's going to be alphanumeric data. And I want a caption saying table of data. You can change the caption to be more appropriate to the particular question. I think it's very important to activate the show copy data and put yes. What does that do? That allows the students to copy the data that they see in the table onto a spreadsheet where they can work with it. You don't want them typing in number by number. It copies the whole thing in one chunk. Okay, go to the next part. Now, within a particular cell in the table, you put in the variable manager after selecting expression. You could do variable manager straight away. And in some cases, I will just do variable manager and not expression. Expression, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it evaluates it as an expression. And then inside the expression is a variable. What variables are we talking about? Well, we're going to name the numbers that we're going to paste into this table. It's not clear just yet what's going on. Understood. Let's see if it gets clear at the next stage. Here is a table that I made in Excel that I'm going to paste inside the table that we saw in the previous slide. Let's look at this construction made in Excel. You can set it up in your own way, your own organization. The organization that worked best for me, index tells me how many versions of the question I have. And in this case, I'm doing a 2x2 table, and I can change the A attribute or the B attribute. And male, female, Democrat, Republican is a classic one in a political year. Sleeps till 10, wakes up by 10, has GPA over 3, GPA less than 3, buys low-fat yogurt, does not buy low-fat yogurt, owns a red car, owns a car that's not red. You can set up whatever you want. I like this freedom with the labels. Many construction questions are constructed with sort of one setup. And I like the freedom to change what's going on in the question, what the labels are. When I go to Chegg or I go to another online facility, Photomath, to see if my students are cheating, and I see what, do they have one of these things? I can make these more and more bizarre, and so that you're not going to see too many matches. And I think that intimidates the students when they realize that, you know, has you put in something has green shoes with purple laces or doesn't have it. How many questions are there like that in the world out there at that moment? And then if you go and you check it, you'll be able to pinpoint which students tried to use Chegg or Photomath to cheat, I guess you call it. So it's up to you. You don't have to have labels if you don't want. You can just put in one set of labels and then change the numbers between different versions of a question. I'm just showing you that it's an option. The numbers that fit in the cell. So this matrix has a 2x2 matrix. And so A1, B1, in the way I've set this up, is male Democrats. A1, B2 is male Republicans. A2, B1, female Democrats, female Republicans. Or sleeps by 10 and A1 is sleeps by 10 and has a GPA over 3. if you want to do it down there. You can make all these attributes, but I've made it in this very general setup, which I just find really convenient. And then I threw a bunch of random numbers in here. I computed the marginal totals using Excel formulas. So the only numerical inputs are in cells E through K through N. On the top, I have the Hawks column for when I paste the field here from G9 on down. In the Excel column, it would be column A, and that's important because you have to make sure that each of the cells you're entering in here, you don't want to enter the ones that are in the spreadsheet when you're really looking at the table references inside of Hawks. I then have the marginal totals, and then I compute probabilities. And I have to translate these into words. These are probabilities of being in cell A1, B1, probability of A1 given B2, B1 given A2. And I can ask maybe 3 questions about probabilities based on this setup. So even though it's truly a cross classification table, a 2x2 scenario, and you can make it 2x3 or 2x4, whatever. I found Hawks didn't have as many 2x2s as I wanted. And I wanted to ask that because it's such a common setup and so important, especially in understanding type 1 and type 2 error, which would come later. So here's the cross table that I set up. Let's go to the next. And now I'm going to drop this column A. Let's see if I can. Here we go. Here now I've created a variable that I've called XX. I just put a label in, a name for the variable. And I said column D is going to be what I'm wanting for a particular part of the table. So the student is going to see a table. And let's see if we can go to the next one. So here, variable A, B, C, D are giving us the labels that we talked about in this data table. I hope it's starting to become a little more clear now how we're using the Excel and the data table inside of Hawks to create a question header. And so now I'm filling the table with the numeric data. We said the numeric data was E, F, G, and H. And you see what says the variable E, F, G, and H. Each one of these, it has to be done one by one. I think I put in a request to Hawks to have a facility where you could, in their data tables and their headers, we could just paste a whole table of variables, just putting the names in like this. But at this point, you have to do one by one. Let's see if it's a question. I think the PowerPoints were supposed to be distributed to answer the question. I believe the PowerPoints were supposed to be distributed so that you could see this PowerPoint. This is kind of a step-by-step PowerPoint, but it's still confusing. Well, what do you do next? How did you get that next thing? You see the copy data is activated because we activated it in the question header setup. So the students will be able to copy this table onto a separate spreadsheet of their own. So next, we now see step 1. What is the probability a randomly selected member of the sample is both A, and C, and that's the A1, B2, the setup we had in the table. And the answer is in the column N. So if we went back to that spreadsheet, we'll see that these correspond. So you have to make sure these correspond. These are the question. These are in the question, and this is in the answer. The answer has been set up now to be a free response answer. So you use variables in the question statement and the answer. The variables XX, and you pick the right column, A, B, C, D, E, all the way out to whatever. And that's why having set up those columns in that spreadsheet is so helpful. I know which column corresponds to the answer to this question. And I know that this is the two things, the A1 and then the B1. So it's in that cross classification table in the right spot. So when I wrote the question probability, I got to this point and then I put the variable. The variable symbol is this chi. And that allowed me to drop the variable in. The expression, I think I have a slide on that coming up. There's the options of having a free response or having a tolerance for the answer. When they write 6 decimals, that's in how much they're going to look at. But in the response, let's see if I can show you where the response is. I'll have to show it to you live. So shows you how the question has it when it gets activated, what it looks like. And this is when you push preview. You save and preview the question frequently, just to see that it's looking the way you want it to look. So here we have our data table. We had a late sleeper, early riser, cum laude student, average student, and these are the students in the table, the way they distribute. What is the probability when you select a member is both a late sleeper and a cum laude student? See the way that it worked out, the A1 and the B1. Express your answer. It's a percentage to 1 decimal. And it shows the answer that you'll get, which is in the column N. You can put a suffix percentage sign to clarify what you want in terms of the answer. You save the question and you need to put a name to the question. I called it cross-class table question. Put a level of difficulty, push OK to save the question. Over here, you see it has an answer tolerance. I made mine 0.002, and I think that does get translated as 0.2% in the way they view it. The accurate to 6 decimals is something different. It has to do with if they enter 6 decimals, it will read 6 decimals. If they enter 7 decimals, it'll just look at 6. I believe that's true. I always tell students, and I put the number of the answers, like answer to 1 decimal. You don't have to answer it to 6 decimals. You just put 1, and that's fine. And you put really what's governing it is the tolerance. You can also check for whether it's simplified or not. And these were activated by using the advanced question features over here. Advanced options gives you access to this in answer tolerance. You really want to always evaluate it as an expression. I've been told that, so I always do. The expression builder, you use that, and you can see here I've thrown in a little bit of LaTeX. So I wanted this to be large. For some reason, I wanted the Greek letter rho, and so you see it's row A1, B2. That's what it looks like here. That's the expression builder. And that's going to help in expressing something. So if I have a problem saying, find the conditional probability, row A1 given B2, probability late sleeper given average student. Well, this may not be the question I really would ask, but I'm showing you how I would use LaTeX inside the question to introduce some Greek letters and to make it bigger or smaller. So you review the entire question. Let's see. Save and enter the question details, add a new step, use LaTeX for Greek and math, and review the entire question, all the steps. Make sure they all kind of hang together and they make sense to you, work them out independently. Sometimes those spreadsheets that you think you had the cell formula copied down, you didn't copy it down correctly all the way. Perhaps you have stuff left over from a previous version. Just check it out a few times with not just once. Review the spreadsheet a few times. Make sure that what you copied into the table in Excel is correct, is the correct version of the latest spreadsheet that you've checked and is fine. You don't want old versions of the table in there. And that's about it. I'm sorry, I'm kind of running out of time, but that's just a few tricks of how you can use Excel to make your own questions using the question builder facility in Hawks. Thank you. Is there a Hawks moderator that would like to take control now?
Sure, thank you, Ira.
Okay.
Now open it up for the questions. We really appreciate you all for attending today. If you or your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposal to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm about to link to the chat right now. And if you have questions, you can direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. We'll be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available. And then we can go ahead and go to the Q&A. It looks like we have a question here. Would you be able to have both this recording and your PowerPoint for how to do this? I think that would be really helpful. Thank you. And yes, that will be provided after the seminar today. We'll get that sent out to you.
Can I ask a question? Is there a way to do a poll to find how many of the instructors use the question builder facility?
Sure, I can
Have any of them used it before? I'm just curious to know if this is something that everybody's been using all the time and I'm preaching to people that already know this and understand everything, or is it something that hasn't been commonly used? Because I don't know how to make a poll from where I am. I don't think I can.
I'm making one right now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Let's see if we can.
In terms of when you don't use it because you don't feel the need to use it, does that have to do with particular topics that maybe Hawks has just covered so well that there's no need? Like what topics? Or is it just kind of all the topics?
And in the chat, someone answered, I don't use it because I don't feel the need to use it.
Right.
Let's see if we can add.
Let's see. Oh, host and panelists can't vote. Okay. Yeah, we'll see now if anybody uses it of the people that attended the session.
Okay, so 50% do not use it or have used it just some. So
Okay.
I've some, know some, often and not often. So
That's good.
have you had any issue with Question Builder timing out when you're building the exercise?
I used to, but I always save it. Everyone, I go through that frequent save and preview process. So when I do that frequently enough, or frequently enough, it's like once every 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't really time out on me. No. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful to those people that might be interested in customizing their own questions and coming
One
up with
other question. Have you had any issues with question builder time? Oh, wait, no, that one. Does math markup language embedded in it to type the equations? Does math,
Say that again. Let me see if I can read the
does
question.
math markup language embedded in it to type? Is math markup language embedded in it to type the equations? That's what the LaTeX is, pretty much, right?
Yes, yes. LaTeX is a kind of a language that allows you to write out different Greek letters without writing a Greek letter, writing math summations and symbols and formulas without writing the actual formulas. And it uses a certain format, a certain nomenclature. It uses a lot of brackets, curly brackets, backslashes. I'd recommend you use it because it between Word and LaTeX, sometimes I'm going back and forth, which is the easiest to use when I'm writing up something. The key thing about LaTeX is even though it shows you a summation, it's not doing any calculations. It is just giving you a picture. And you're controlling what that picture looks like by making it large or small, by using sum for summation. And if you're not sure what to use, just Google it or DuckDuckGo it. How do I write something in LaTeX? And you'll find often there are hundreds of hits where people explain that I would do it this way, I would do it that way. But yeah, it's nice.
And we have a comment in the chat from one of the panelists. You can use math type in Word, change the equation to LaTeX form and copy into the expression in Hawks.
Awesome. That's a good point. That's a nice way to do it. Definitely.
And then you have a lot of thank you and thanks. And somebody answered intermediate algebra and fundamental math is what they.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't use this in intermediate algebra or fundamental math. You don't really need to, from my experience, but it was in the statistics that I started saying there's questions I want to ask that aren't necessarily here.
And generally, how much time do you take each semester to build questions in the question builder?
Like with a lot of things, there's a big initial hurdle, an initial investment of time and learning how it works, and then in making it work. But then once you got it, you got a question and you might look it over and say, yeah, I want to polish that a little bit. The spacing here doesn't look quite right. Maybe and so I spend a very little time maybe polishing a question or two. But once I have my set of questions that I want to add, there is almost like no time because I just copy the questions into the new version and I can put it inside these questions inside of a lesson. So the lesson can have instructor created questions and the Hawk questions. So I don't spend too much time doing that. I go to the folder that I have from the old class, question on Poisson distribution, put those in lesson whatever in the advanced statistics having to do with Poisson or binomial, similarly, whatever I have. So once you have that organized set of folders from the old class and you've invested, it then becomes pretty easy doing any subsequent class. I'd say maybe an hour at most.
And have you ever, going to those Chegg or websites you referred to, have you ever found any of your tables built into there?
No, I haven't. And I guess part of that is maybe that I told them that I would be looking, but I have checked in Chegg and Photomath. I have discovered some Hawks questions in Chegg and Photomath. I'm not sure if you've tried that yourself. It's pretty eye-opening how much is out there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Professor Rob,
Okay.
and thank you all for attending today. If you think of any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Hawks. You can contact marketing@hawkslearning.com for anything in regards to this webinar today. And like I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out this recording on building questions using Hawks tables, Excel, and LaTeX. And along with the PowerPoint slides if you had not already received them. But we do appreciate you attending and for your presentation. And hope you have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everybody.